Hello, everyone. I'm Anjali Bhamani. I hope you guys are having a great time at Big Bad Con right now. Big Bad Con Online 2023. I am here to present a panel, seminar, course, informal Q&A with all of you that I like to call the art of playing you, playing characters and being an artist in the age of technology. So before we go on, I suppose I should let you know who I am if you haven't yet met me or don't have any idea who the hell is talking to you right now. I'm Anjali Bhamani. I am an actress, author, producer, many things. In the gaming world, people mostly know me from playing Symmetra in Overwatch and Rampart and Apex Legends. From some of the work that I've done with Critical Role and with Geek and Sundry and other companies. And then also in the television and film world, I do a lot of stuff. Probably most notably recently was Ms. Marvel for Disney Plus. So I have my hand in a lot of different mediums. And I've been doing this for eons, for like longer than many of you who are watching have been alive. So what that means is that I do feel like what I can offer you today and that I hope you will be able to make use of is a perspective that offers different vantage points on how to deal with technology as just a reality in today's day and age, but also specifically as an artist and specifically as someone who works in creative fields or plays in creative fields like the TTRPG community, because so much of what we do is about human connection and exploring the human experience. And yet the more advanced technology gets, and ostensibly the closer it's supposed to be bringing us all worldwide, a lot of us find that there is this disconnect that happens because we're all talking through screens and we're playing through screens. And how do you maintain your artistic fire? How do you maintain your connection with other human beings, a real human connection, when you're also dealing with, these devices and then these devices and, putting as many screens as you can in front of your face all at once? So that's the overarching topic that I want to talk with you guys about today. I'm pulling up some notes here. I also wanted to offer up, and that this is going to go for the whole hour that we're here, or 47 minutes, or however long we have together. I like to run this as a very casual conversation between me and all of you. I know I can't see your faces and I wish I could, but we have a lovely moderator there who is going to feed me the questions as you guys fire them off. And I will do my best to answer them and make sure that I am tailor making this conversation so that it is a conversation, so that it is something that you guys are interested in listening to and giving you the answers that you need. So the art of playing you, what exactly do I mean by that? I think no matter what we do as artists, there is a part of ourselves, obviously, that we bring to what we're creating. And as artists, I don't just mean actors and painters and performers, but I mean people who have to create on demand for a living. Whether you are a sound designer, whether you are a writer, whether you are someone who works at a marketing agency, one way or the other, we are bringing ourselves to the work that we do, right? Now, when we were all doing this, what's the word that I'm looking for? We were doing this without technology. When we were doing this first in person, face to face, that human connection and bringing that part of yourself to the art was very easy, and it still is very easy when we do get to be in the same rooms. But how do we do that when we are creating characters that immediately or automatically disconnected, slightly disconnected from each other? One of the things that I love the most about role playing games is that it gives us the opportunity to explore the human condition in a safe space. It gives us the opportunity to explore other cultures in a safe space. It gives us the opportunity to explore parts of ourselves that we may not necessarily feel comfortable exploring in our day-to-day lives. It gives us the opportunity to really explore those, the hidden parts, sometimes the dark parts, sometimes the things that we are working through but don't necessarily want to foist on other people. We can learn, we can grow, we can share, we can collaborate. It's a very exciting space. So to start with, I'd like to just talk about some basic creative practices and personal practices that I have found are useful to me when maintaining an online presence, but also not wanting to lose the personal fuel that I use for my creative endeavors. One of the biggest things for me, And this may not sound like it is necessarily related to TTRPGs, but I think it is incredibly related. And I was actually just having a conversation with a fellow creator today about this, is how you present yourself online. And not necessarily about how you present yourself to other people, but how much of yourself do you give away? How much of yourself, how much of everything that you are, do you put out there? Everybody has a different set of parameters. Everybody has a different set of tolerances for how much of themselves we want to share. And contrary to popular belief, actors are not all extroverts. Actors don't always want the spotlight. Artists don't always want the spotlight. A lot of times we do this. A lot of us do this because playing a character is a safe space, and we don't have to share our personal lives or our private lives. So what I like to do when I'm thinking of how to present my life online, or how to present different aspects of what I'm doing online, is I like to divide things into three categories. I divide them into the public, the personal, and the private. Public is obvious. It's us right now. It's what I'm putting out in the world. I put out that I'm an actor. I put out that I have a dog named Charlie. Whatever it is, I put out that I'm all of the things that I'm perfectly comfortable with anyone in the world knowing. The personal is where you guys come in. It's where the people opposite me, the people who I'm playing with, the people who we are connecting with online, that's where that comes in. That's when we start making that connection. But the most important delineation for me personally is, where does that private line come in? Now, it's different for other people. And some of us feel, or have been pressured into believing, that sharing that private side of ours is the only way you can make a personal connection with your audience or with the people that you're playing with. And I am here to tell you that is not true. I have a very personal connection with a lot of people, and I care deeply about a lot of people online that I play with, that I create with, but my private life is my private life. And I don't pull from that in order to grow the public or the personal without being very, 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 very careful about what I share. And this goes for you as creators of games. This goes for you as a professional who, if you're working with a company or other companies or trying to present yourself, please do remember that you do not have to. Intimacy is not sharing everything. That's not the definition of it. Intimacy is sharing parts of yourself and being accepted across that category, and being accepted by the people that you're sharing it with. But you do not have to be intimately open with everyone, with your whole audience. You don't have to share those personal things. And I would advise you to be very, very careful and very cautious about what you do, and don't share it until you're ready, because once the toothpaste is out of the tube, it's out. The world has it. And even when you are doing something that is public, that is on Twitch, that is on Instagram, wherever it is, there has to be a part of you that you keep for yourself. I actually do this even in personal relationships. There has to be a part of yourself. There has to be time that you keep for yourself, for creating, for growing, for living your own life. There has to be that part of you that you keep for yourself, so that you have something to fuel you when you do have to maintain something in the public eye, when you do want to connect with new people that you haven't met before. All of that is wonderful, but just please don't diminish that time with yourself and that boundary. And I know boundaries, it's not a word that I love to use, because I think it implies that you are blocking people, but just offering yourself that safe space in yourself, because it's very important. And don't let anyone take that away from you, because no one can without you letting them. Does anyone have any questions about that before I move on? I can't see Twitch right now, but our lovely moderator, Lila, is going to help me see your questions if anyone has one, or my friend here, if she happens to be on Twitch. Oh, look at you. You are seeing it. Is anything popping up that we need to know? Okay, you'll let me know. Awesome. I got two friends here. Cool. So now we jump into creating characters. I love creating characters, both in TTRPGs, on television, anywhere it is, creating a full picture of a human being from scratch. And there are so many different ways that you can come into that process that can be powerful for you. Anything that I offer here to you today, by the way, is an opinion. This is not me telling you how it's done. This is not me telling you how you should do it. Everything that I'm offering to you is a tool for your toolbox that may or may not work for you. And I want you to give yourself the license to decide if anything that I say here works for you or if it doesn't. Take everything with a grain of salt, because ultimately you're in charge of your own life and you get to make the decisions, which is the really cool position of power that we all find ourselves in. So creating characters, for me, I tend to start with one truth that I decide about the character. And that truth can be any number of things. It can be an emotional truth, it can be a circumstantial truth, it can be a physical truth, it can be an artistic piece of inspiration that I found that makes me excited to play a character. I just finished filming Desi Quest, and there was a particular animal that was my inspiration for the character, knowing that I wanted that animal to be part of this character's life. So I like to start with one thing. I'm going to take a couple of the characters that I have played with publicly so that I can share that with you. Oh, great. How do you handle creative bleed when it comes to work versus personal enjoyment? That is a great question. I'm going to hit that question in just a second. Let me just finish this one thought about about creating that character. So, for example, Fiera Rai, a character I played on a show called Exandria Unlimited. She was a Fire Genasi monk. And this particular character, what I very much wanted to explore was someone who had a tremendous sense of duty combined with a tremendous sense of regret about something that happened in her life. And how do you reconcile that conflict? I wanted to see what it was like. Someone who's so noble, but in their heart feels like they have done so wrong. I love playing characters that have a little bit of internal conflict, because that gives you something to work with from moment to moment and watch them grow from the beginning of your campaign or the beginning of your one shot or whatever it is to the end. And I also find that when you give yourself that in the beginning, you can surprise yourself with what direction that character goes in. If you stay committed to that through the whole thing. I want to go to this question that was just asked. How do you handle creative bleed when it comes to work versus personal enjoyment? So I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I think I understand what you mean, but if I'm wrong, please, hit us up in the comments and I will come back. I say this in my book. I say this quite often. And in fact, Marisha wrote the introduction in my book all about the fact that I say this quite often, which is that I take my fun very seriously. And part of that is because for me, if I'm going to be working for a long period of time, it's got to be fun. There's got to be something in it that I am enjoying, even if it's hard, even if it's painful, even if it's me doing an incredibly dramatic role on stage that just drains me. There's got to be something innately fun about it, something innately fulfilling about it, because I am just not a person who can function without that fire. When I find myself doing too many things that don't provide me some kind of personal enjoyment or gratification or fulfillment, I find that my creative juices don't flow. And because my work is entirely creative, even though it's in so many different mediums, I cannot create, I cannot write, I can't make a good meal if I'm not somehow being fueled or fulfilled by the thing that I'm doing. I will say, and this is a challenge for anyone who is playing, really committing themselves to the story the way, like when I say I take my fun seriously, I want to be with people who, when I'm playing a TTRPG, are committing themselves to the story. We can have fun and we can joke around and stuff, but ultimately it's all about the story. It's all about filling up this universe, not this is what I want my character to do, right? I will say that there is one big challenge there, which is that when you emotionally invest in a character and in a story, sometimes it can be hard to let that go when you leave the table or you leave the set or whatever. And I do have some personal practices that I have put into motion. And I know that there are so many others in the world, but so much of this has to really do with just getting right with yourself in the world and getting right with the fact that your emotions are not facts. Your emotions are not the truth. They are emotions. They are barometers of where things are in your world. They might help you stay on track, or help you see when you are off track with the things that you want to do. But when I am feeling sad, it does not mean that the world is broken around me. It just means that I am feeling sad. And that has been something that's been very, very important for me to develop over time, not just as a human being, but as an actress. Because then when you have that awareness that this is just a feeling, this is just happening now, and it will move if I allow myself to have it, not fight against it, but allow myself to have it. That's when I jump into a TTRPG, or I jump into a scene, or I jump into anything, and I really invest. If I'm having that period of time afterwards where I'm kind of shaky and I'm kind of riding this wave and I'm kind of trying to decide what is my feeling and what is the feeling of the character, I can just say to myself, this is happening now, but it's not happening forever. This is how I'm feeling right now, but this is not how I'll be feeling forever. Sometimes I'll talk to myself if it's really tough to let it go. And to talk and debrief with your fellow players or your fellow performers. I think that's very, very important. TTRPGs can be a very, you build tremendous relationships playing these, whether you're doing them publicly or with your friends. And I think surrounding yourself with a safe space full of people who are able to talk about that with you is a really important thing. Let me know if that answered your question about Creative Bleed, because I can't say that I did it for my whole career. There were definitely times when work was not enjoyable, and I was just doing it for a paycheck or whatever. But I have definitely focused very intently on curating a life where I am. If it doesn't, it's going to sound so blunt, if it doesn't make me happy or make me money, or preferably both, I'm not going to do it. Whatever it is, and that's not just career. That's life. That's life. I would rather spend time at home with my dog than do a job that's going to drain me, in my heart and in my core. So I know that sounds like a position of privilege, but it came from years and years and years and years and years of being insistent about finding some kind of fulfillment through whatever process I'm in. So I hope that answers your question. Oh, great. Thank you. Wonderful. It did. Okay. Second question. What do you do when you begin to play a character, but they just don't feel right to you when you get to the table with the other PCs? Do you find them? Oh, what a great question. I love this question. So I'm going to pose a question back to you. It's a little bit of a rhetorical question, but first I'm going to pose a question back to you. Have you ever been in that position in your life where you've been going down a path, whether it's a career path or your dating life or whatever, and you look back and you're like, you know what? That's just not the person I want to be. That's just not, I don't want to live that life. I don't want that. And then you start looking for things that are other than that. Your characters can do the exact same thing. I mean, I know RPGs are not all Dungeons and Dragons, but in D&D you get to multi-class, which means you can change anytime you want. I also think one of the most powerful tools that we all have, and that hopefully your GMs and your DMs are offering you, is a session zero, where you can really talk through the character and maybe play a little bit and decide how that character feels in your body and feels in your heart. We live in a world where changing your mind is okay. People might tell you that it's not, but I'm here to tell you it's okay, because we wouldn't have had some of the greatest creators of our time if they hadn't first done something else and said, you know what, that's not right for me. I'm going to do this. Or, I did this thing, but I'm done with it. Now I'm going to start this one. So I think that it's wonderful to have a moment where you start playing a character and then all of a sudden you're like, something doesn't feel right. And how exciting is it to be able to say that even as the character in game? Like, how wonderful would it be to be this character who just suddenly decides, I don't feel like this is right for me. And you get to narratively make sense of that in the game. You get to bounce that off of the other characters in the game when a character is having a crisis of confidence or a personal soul crisis and just saying, I need help. I don't know what I want to do. Some of my favorite characters of all time in long form improv, which is essentially what I think of RPGs as, some of my favorite characters of all time have had those moments where they just didn't like who they were or didn't like how they were, and they found a way to change it over time. That's a beautiful place. I offer you, what do? You lean in. That's what you do. You lean right into that truth and acknowledge it with yourself and acknowledge it with the other players. And if you want to, obviously, look, this is a game. It's a game. So obviously, if you want to, you can stop right there and be like, I don't like this character. What can we do about it? It's not like you're stuck in stone doing that. But I love finding it in the play, in the changing of the story, because you can find so many exciting things that way. Really, really exciting things. When you're exploring parts of yourself, how do you negotiate with the other players at the table to make sure it's something they are ready to interact with and that they will support and encourage? Aha. Fantastic question. So this is, I'm sure people have talked about this a little bit throughout Big Bad Con, and so this is a very common concern. Ideally speaking, first of all, you have a DM or a GM who is open to you either using an X card or you're open to you telling them, okay, these are the things that I absolutely do not want to deal with in this game. If the storyline goes in this direction, I can't take it for whatever reason, for whatever it is, because we all have things that we just don't want to deal with in game. And so hopefully your GM or your DM has created an open enough space for that to be the case. In terms of supporting and encouraging, I don't know how more, I don't know how to say this more gently, so apologies if this sounds a little abrupt. But if you are playing with people who won't support and encourage you in general, you need to find different people to play with, because this is a world. This particularly role playing games. It is a world where you are making yourself vulnerable, not just as a character, but you're making yourself vulnerable as a person. Because there's a lot that we don't know. There's a lot of things that we're going to do. We're going to screw up. It's life. We're going to be doing things that are hard. And if you find yourself in a place where people are shaming you for something, or people are forcing you to do something you don't want to do, just like in life, I would highly encourage you to find another group to play with. And that's me. That's my extreme. Like, not extreme, but that's my non-negotiable. I'm very lucky that the people that I have played with in my adult life have been nothing less than extraordinary and open and kind human beings. But I do also understand, and particularly I know this happens with people who come from minority backgrounds or potentially marginalized communities, and I know sometimes it can be really hard to find people. I guarantee you, if you reach out on the internet somewhere and you're looking for people who are open to that, you will find a group of people who are ready to play with you and ready to support you. And last but not least, if you do find yourself in a situation where it is painful or it is hurtful, and if these happen to be your friends, that's a great time to open a dialogue that needs to be opened anyway outside of game, to be able to have that conversation with people. I have found that the more, how do I put this? I've found that the more talented the individual in general, and the more good at what they do in general, the individual, the more generous that they are. So if you find yourself being pushed around by someone else, this is not to say you take it, but this is just to remind you that chances are that's not coming from you. That's coming from something that they're dealing with that has nothing to do with you. So that's, I know that kind of blurs the lines between playing and psychology. And again, I am not a doctor. I only play them on TV. I am not a psychologist or any kind of expert in terms of your emotional state. This is just stuff that I have learned from me that has worked in the past. Whatever you do, please don't internalize it and turn it against yourself. That much I can say. I've done that before in other situations. It is not helpful, and it is not, it's not going to get you anything but frustrated and sad. Learning how to, so let's talk also a little bit about, well, let's go back to the character creation process. So finding that one thing, that one hook that really nails me to a character, I find that that's really, 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 really fun. And then after that, one of the things I ask myself, because a lot of my players for me are aspirational versions of me, things that I would want to be in a circumstance like they are given. Ask myself, what would I want to be if I were in the zombie apocalypse? Who would I, Anjali, hope that I would be? Who would I be proud to be? How would I feel like cool. I feel good about being this person in that time. That does not mean making a perfect character, because humans of all kinds are flawed, and our flaws are kind of what make the stories interesting. But a great example of this was when I played a character named Stingray in a zombie apocalypse show called We're Alive Frontier, which was with the Outbreak Undead gameplay series. Now, I am not a zombie lover, zombie story lover. I'm not a horror person. That's just like not my genre. So what I needed to do was cool. If this happened in real life, what traits of my own would I hope would rise to the forefront? What would be the things? And what I ended up grabbing onto was, I am a fierce protector of my loved ones. I'll let anyone, like, I can take whatever I can take, but what I really want is, like, if someone comes after my loved ones, they better look out. They better look out. And that is exactly what I grabbed onto for that character, for better or for worse for her, as I discovered throughout the course of the campaign. Because sometimes when you're fighting so hard for someone else, it backfires at you. But that was a great hook to grab onto for me, because it's a very playable thing. It's a thing that I could connect with very specifically. So that right there, that's another hook. Who would I want to be? Same thing with the character that I played named Miriam in Undeadwood. If I were in this world where historically women did not have a tremendous amount of political power or financial power, where would I find my power? What would be the place that would, in Anjali, that would allow me to find my power and hold on to my power? And for this character, it was her femininity. She found her power in the fact that she was a woman, even though historically the women around her didn't have power. She leaned into that. She leaned into all of the things that made her who she was. And again, I found that to be a very powerful thing for that story. So I hope that that is a useful thing for you guys to nugget for you guys to hang on to. What are some decompression techniques we can employ after some heavy role play and maybe some bleed at the end of a session or at the end of the campaign where we're retiring a character? Number one is self-compassion. Because you are feeling something that is undesirable does not mean there's anything wrong with you, does not mean the feelings are wrong. It does not mean that you are somehow not professional or somehow anything. Being compassionate with yourself and allowing yourself, like literally talking to yourself and saying, it's okay. I know you've just been through something big. It's okay. It's okay. Just telling yourself I'm putting this character to rest, but doesn't mean that it's gone from my heart. And again, if some of this sounds a little bit woo-woo, I know, but we are dealing with emotions here, and bleed is a very emotional thing, I think. I recently experienced a tremendous amount, like a very unexpected amount of bleed after putting a particular, I wouldn't really call it a session, but a long, like 7-session game. And putting it to rest. I had a really hard time letting go of this. And going back to what I was saying about surrounding yourself with people that you can talk with, just being with people who understood it, and not necessarily talking about the bleed, but talking and being connected with other people who might be going through it. Sometimes I think we think that talking about the problems that we're having is somehow solving them. But I find that acknowledging them and talking about them are two different things. So when I was letting go of this particular character and I was feeling what I was feeling, and I actually left the gameplay, and everyone was celebrating, and I had to go away, and I just had to have a good old-fashioned meltdown. I had to just like cry and let it go. But while I was doing that, I was just saying, this is okay. This is okay. You're gonna be fine. Everyone's gonna be fine. And eventually I'm going to be able to share this once I feel like I am prepared. I'm going to be able to share this with the rest of the team because they will understand it. That is another big thing. If you are playing regularly in TTRPGs, just like I do for my acting life, I think it's very, 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 very important to have your personal grounding touchstones in your life. My husband is a touchstone. My dog is a touchstone. My office is a touchstone. This room, as messy as it is it's a blast of color. I come in here and I'm automatically happier. Even if you just have something in your hand that reminds you of good times, or something that you see every day. Having these little touchstones, there's actually neuroscience behind this, but I won't go deep into it. Having these visual touchstones around you, even if it's Post-it notes, whatever it is, having these visual touchstones around you help your primitive brain to reconnect with the truth you know and want to be true. All around here, there is nothing in this room that doesn't come out of a place of creativity or love. Because when I step into this room, that's what I want to feel. And so having spaces that you can go to, or items that you can go to, or just remembering like people and emotional moments. Like I said, there are so many touchstones that I go to, experiences with my husband or experiences with my dog that I go to. And all of us have the place to do that, whether it's with other people or with things that we're doing. We all have the ability to do that because we've all had those moments that are so joyous or so grounding or so perfect that we can they as my friend said, they live rent free in my brain. Please, for the love of God, stay in there. So connecting with those and having something that reminds you of that, I think is a really useful thing. Let's see, where are we at? 12:40. Oh my gosh, you guys, it's going so fast. Do we have any other questions before I hop into something else? And by the way, guys, I'm here. Like, I know this is a specific topic that we're talking about, but if you have any questions, I'm here. Oh, thank you. I didn't see this one. How do you approach character building differently for a one shot versus a long campaign? I don't, because in my mind, the character lives well past that one shot, and in my mind, and in my hope, that character could come into another game, or we could do another one shot of that world. So, I don't approach building the character differently. What I do approach is how I tell the story differently. Because if we are attempting to tell a complete story or share a complete experience in one shot, that means that there needs to be a journey that's made a lot faster. So, for example, while I might keep a lot of secrets in a longer campaign, I might keep a lot of secrets from other characters and from other players through a long campaign and let them kind of be dribbled out a little bit more. In a one shot, those might come up a little bit more quickly. Those might come out a little bit more readily. Just because they haven't come out in the entire character's life before the campaign doesn't mean this can't be the moment. This is the big moment of change. And that, that is part of storytelling, period, both as a writer, as an actor, as anything, is when you are beginning the thing that the audience is seeing. And in this case, the audience is you and your compatriots who you're creating with, whether you're doing it publicly or not. There has to be some kind of inciting incident, some kind of thing that is, why is this day different than all the days before that? Now, more often than not, your GM or your DM is going to provide you with something like that, something extraordinary that sets everything into motion. But that's the plot point. What does that plot point do to your character? That's the part that's all you. That's the part where you get to be creative and you get to have that moment of, today is the day this character's life changes. Doesn't end, hopefully, if you roll well. But this is the day that their life as they know it is going to change. And when we have a longer campaign, we don't know when it's going to happen, because we're living with this character for an unlimited amount. We have no idea. So for me, that's the big difference. It's not necessarily about creating a different character so much as how am I telling the story of that character while I'm also continuing to play the game and leave room for other people to tell the story, because you can't dominate it yourself. Let me know if that answers that question. Oh, here we go. How do you incorporate negative elements, flaws, and the like into a character without overly leaning into them? So this is like, I don't know if you guys have ever heard this. Here's AKA, how do you play villains or flawed people without playing an a-hole? Great question. So I'm going to give you two things. First is our flawed heroes and our flawed villains. Flawed heroes, just like when they tell you in acting school, when you're playing drunk, what you're really playing is trying not to be drunk. Same thing with our flaws. Just because we have our flaws doesn't mean we have to be our flaws. We as human beings are always fighting against those, right? So if you give your character plenty of opportunities to try to fight against that, to try to overcome that, to try to continue in whatever way that is, it gives you something to work against, as a conflict within yourself, and it feeds that into the story. It allows other characters to come to the rescue. It allows other things, it allows so many more things to happen than to just saying, well, this is what's wrong with my character, so I have to do that. If my character has some particular kind of handicap, and I don't mean a physical handicap, I just mean there's something that's working against them, they are constantly thinking about how to work around that, or how to work past that, or how to get past that to get the thing done. They're not giving up. They're just saying, okay, these are my given circumstances. What am I going to work with? If I am not a particularly strong character, how can I use my brain? If I'm not a particularly smart character, how can I use my speed? All of those things. Now, villains are slightly different. In my opinion, no villain thinks they're a villain. Villains, and you'll see this throughout media. I think one of my favorite examples is Magneto, in all of the X-Men things. Villains still believe they're doing the right thing. Even Thanos thought he was doing the right thing. The best written villains really believe in the cause that they are villainous because of, if that makes sense. That's terrible grammar. But finding what that villain's reason is for doing the things that are not necessarily things that everybody else would like them to do. Finding their genuine reasons for it, I think, makes a villain very, very interesting, makes them much more interesting for the audience. Someone who's just innately bad is really, really boring. Someone who just does bad things to be bad, I'm not really interested in watching them or playing them. But if you have a villain who has a particular wrong that they feel needs to be righted, and that is their ethical journey that they are going on, and they may also, once, the cool thing about that is that there is still an arc for that character as well. Because if they've been living by this code of conduct and code of ethics because of a truth that they believe to be true, and this thing deep inside of them that's driving them, there is still an opportunity for someone to change their mind. There is still an opportunity for the events of the game to change their mind. And that, again, goes all the way back to that character. How do you approach it when you're playing a character and then suddenly it doesn't feel right? Your villain could be that person. Your villain could all of a sudden realize, wow, I've been being a total asshole this whole time, and this is wrong. This is not what I meant to do. And then what happens? What is that sea change in their life? That to me is always interesting. There's nothing interesting about an irredeemable villain, but there's so much interesting about someone who you can really, like, I can understand why they're doing that. I can understand. I don't like it. I don't agree with it. I wouldn't do it in the same circumstances, but I do understand the thought process that goes into that course of action. And if you start to look at most of our great movies and stories and just everything over time, mythology even, if you start to really look into that, I think you'll find that the most interesting villains are like that. That's why I love Loki so much. And the way that Tom Hiddleston played him too. Cool. Did we have any other questions? We're so close, you guys. We got 12 more minutes. Any other questions before I move on? Bueller. Okay, cool. Maintain the private personal, creating characters, learning how to protect yourself from difficult or challenging energy. Great. Sorry, I'm going through my notes here. That's not very smooth of me. Let's talk about telling those stories. Let's talk about what exactly I mean when you're talking about telling the character's story. Because the character's story, there are two stories going on, right? There is the plot of the whole story, and then there's the plot from the vantage point of your character. Because all of us, as human beings, we see our lives through our vantage point. We're the heroes of our own story, ostensibly, right? Well, hopefully you're all the heroes of your own story and you're not making yourself a supporting character. So when I am creating these characters and thinking of their journey through the whole story, I am also thinking of what that life looks like through their eyes, which honestly helps you a lot with metagaming as well. What does this circumstance look like through their eyes, but also how does that feed the larger story? How does the fact that this person has a terrible relationship with someone else that's off screen or off camera or off, like an NPC that we don't know, how does that affect their choices going forward? How does that story, how does that part of things affect what they're talking about or affect their actions? there's so many opportunities for us to tell stories, so many opportunities for us to there's so many opportunities for us to tell a better story through failed roles than through successful roles. Those are successful roles are always fun and they're always like really exciting and you feel good and you're relieved. But when you have those failures and you have to narrate that through your character's eyes, I feel like just like in life, we don't learn who we are at our core from our successes. We learn who we are by how we handle unwanted circumstances and how we move past them or how we move through them or how we overcome them. And that I think is a very important thing to constantly remind yourself of in your storytelling as well. Even if you're playing a character who's a jerk, or even if you're playing a character who's a villain, it's the same thing. Who telling that part of the story, but not separate from the bigger story, the bigger overarching story, I think is a wonderful place to practice your virtuosity at gameplay, and a place to practice your ability to, I know what I wish I could do, but this is what I would do. I know what Anjali wants so badly for the character, but this is really what makes sense in this circumstance for the character. Again, you'll see so much of this in some of the best TTRPG shows that I certainly have seen. You'll see so much of this, of people kind of struggling through it, but being like, nope, this is what the character would do. So I'm gonna do it. I might die, but this is what the character would do. That allowing yourself to fail, quote unquote, failing into a better story is a really, really fun thing. And I would urge you, especially if you're someone like me who hates losing, I would urge you to lean into that. How does failure make this a better story? That's been a surprisingly effective storytelling tool for me over the last few years. So, last thing I really do want to talk about with all of you guys is how to find more and cultivate more sides of yourself, or more interest in things, to be able to create more and more varied characters. And this is going to sound very, very simple, what I'm about to say. It's going to almost potentially sound stupid, so apologies, but here it is. And I say this to actors all the time. Even though you want to be a creative professional who creates characters and creates stories, remember that there is nothing in your life that will not serve you as a creator. Whatever you learn, whatever you read, whatever relationships you have, whatever conversations you have, whatever interests you have, one way or the other, it goes into the person that you are bringing to this game or to this show. One way or the other, the fullness of who you are is going to be more effective as a storyteller and a creator than studying, how do I be a great actor? How do I be a great this? How do I specifically, what is the specific technique I use for this scene? Because ultimately what we are trying to do is create stories that touch people, create stories about full people and about full lives and about full universes. And you can't do that when all you're focusing on is, how do I be a great XYZ? How do I do this specific thing? Getting out and engaging life is vital, so that you can bring back something that no one else can bring to your game or to your show, which is you. There is no other version of you. There is no other you on the planet. You are the unique sum of all of the things that make you who you are, of all of the experiences that make you who you are. Rock climbing helps me as an actor. Having conversations with my dad helped me as an actor. Having every single thing helps me as an actor. And remembering that you don't need to be single-mindedly focused on the game or the gameplay, or watching other people play games, or watching other streams, or watching don't do that to yourself. Allow yourself that time, but remember, the most important thing that you can develop in order to be a better player, a better performer, is you, the fullness of who you are. That's the most important thing. And take very good care of your emotions. I am a big believer in therapy. I am a big believer in, if you have people in your life, confidence in your life, if you have a spiritual advisor, whatever it is, allow yourself that exploration of yourself outside of games, outside of acting, so that you can then safely bring it in to what you're doing. Like I said, one of the for me, my acting took an exponential leap when I realized that the emotions I was feeling in quote unquote real life were not the truth. That being sad didn't mean that my life was sad or that I was sad. It just meant I felt sad. And being able to do that on a regular basis and being able to move through the world powerfully, that's going to make it so much more fun for you to play your games so that you can then have those high highs and those low lows and then go back to your own life and know that your life is completely there the same way you left it. How can we make genuine connections online when everyone is playing an inauthentic performative version of themselves? What a great question to end on. I'm going to turn this around a little bit. I don't necessarily think that people are putting out inauthentic versions of themselves. I do think that a lot of us are putting out part of who we are. And a lot of times that part that we put out is the curated part, the part that we are willing for the whole world to see. Making those individual connections, I personally feel like only comes from one-to-one FaceTime. And that FaceTime is just like you can be on FaceTime on your gadget, but having that moment with people directly, it requires a certain amount of bravery because it does mean that person that you are interacting with through comments or through tweets or whatever, you're going to have to DM them and you're going to have a conversation with them. And you're going to, at some point or another, if you want to know who they are, actually have to have that FaceTime with them. And I would urge you that when you are going to play with other people, particularly RPGs, that you have some FaceTime with people before you start playing, or at least have a friend who can vouch for the fact that, like, this is a good person. You're going to really enjoy playing with them. I don't personally like playing with complete strangers that I've never met before that no one has told me they know. Like it's a hard thing, which is why it's very important to build those relationships before you get in that circumstance. Anyone who is frustrated with the fact that the world is all about who you know, go out there and know people. Slip into someone's DMs and say, hey, I think you're really, really cool, and I would love a chance to talk with you more. If they say no, there are a million other people that you can do with. That's not about you. But please do not be afraid of connecting with people directly. That's why my DMs are wide open. And I have a front-facing email also for anyone who needs it. Anjali@IamFunsize.com. Super easy. But yeah, I think that's the most important thing, because it also goes back to, if I'm going back to that thing that I talked about at the very beginning, that we have the public us, the personal us, and the private us. The best place I like to live online is that personal place where I'm having personal connections with people, but I'm not giving away the part of me that only is reserved for me and my dearest, closest people. And that is a place that needs to be earned entrance into, if that makes sense. So I would urge you to in order to make it a little bit easier and a little bit less defensive to connect with people when you're like, it's one thing to say everybody's being inauthentic, but it's another thing to say, okay, they're showing that this is the first layer. What they're showing is the first layer. Let me find out what that second layer is by having some one-on-one communication. I don't think you can do it front-facing on Twitter or front-facing on Instagram. I think you really need to do it in direct messages, in direct FaceTimes, and hopefully person-to-person with the people that you play with and the people that you meet. So get out there and know people. Put yourself out there. I know it's scary. I know it can be scary. And I know sometimes that means someone will say no. But no does not mean you have been rejected. No just means someone said no. That's all it is. I hope that this has been helpful to you guys. I hope that you've had a good time. I know that we talked a lot about very, very personal things and emotions and stuff like that, but I do think that they're very important to this universe and to creating characters that we can dive into and explore difficult things with while still maintaining our own personal emotional safety. If you ever have questions, like I said, you can hit me up online at Anjali@IamFunsize.com. All of my DMs are open, if I'm not mistaken, although I'm terrible on Facebook. So you probably don't want to message me there. And I'm always open to learning more and finding out more about you. Remember to take good care of yourselves, because you're the only you we have. We really, 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 really need you in the world. And that's it. I hope that you all have wonderful dice luck, and I hope that you all have a wonderful time at Big Bad Con. Don't forget that the fundraiser is still going, so you can still donate at this point. Even though they've met their goal, all of the money that goes after this point is essentially for scholarships for more people to get to come to the con. So now that money goes directly back to the community. It's even more important now to be donating to that fundraiser. So please stay connected there, and I hope to see and talk with the rest of you soon.